Welcome back to Ask Lee. It's Wednesday again. So, as always, just a reminder, if you would like me to answer a question on this slot, then just leave the question in the comments to one of the Ask Lee videos, and I will add it to the list. And if you're listening on the podcast, you can go to my podcast on Anchor.fm, or as it's called now, Spotify for podcasters, and just leave me a voice note there. Okay, so today's question is all about non-theistic and theistic Satanism. A question from Alison. Welcome to my channel. You are entering the world of magic and mysticism with your host, Lee W. Johnson. Keep the lights on and help improve the channel by becoming a supporter for just $2.99 per month. Hit the join button. Okay, so as mentioned just now, a question from Alison. Alison said, "Hi Lee, hope you are keeping well." I am, thank you very much. My question is for a newbie who's starting out in Satanism. Is it easier to be a non-theist or a theist Satanist? Alright, so can't really say either or is easier or more difficult, because they both have a completely different worldview. So this is going to depend largely on your own beliefs in spirit, in supernatural beings. The idea of supernatural can be argued that things are not beyond or above nature itself, that everything is nature, therefore nothing is actually supernatural. But that's generally the term that's used, supernatural beings. So we're going to just use that for ease of reference. Now, when it comes to non-theistic versus theistic Satanism, again, as I said, this is going to be purely based on your own beliefs, your own understandings. So you really have to ask yourself what you believe in. Do you believe there are entities out there which are gods, goddesses, deities, demons, spirits, fairies, jinn, all of these spirits, these otherworldly entities that we can interact with, that we can speak to, that we can converse with, that we can have a relationship with? Or do you believe that there are none of these entities out there? Now, the difficulty here is that when we talk about theistic and non-theistic Satanism specifically, there are different factions, different ideologies behind Satanism. So as mentioned, we have the non-theistic Satanist. Let's actually start with a theistic Satanist, because there's actually three types here. There's also atheistic. And this is where things get a little bit sticky. So theistic Satanism is really quite simple. There is the belief that there is an entity called Satan, and in many regards there are other entities. Some theistic Satanists will only be focused on Satan himself or herself or itself, and will disregard all of the other entities and spirits. So there's a lot of theisms out there, so go and research the theisms as well. So we've got some that would believe only in Satan, disregarding all other spirits, but that Satan is an entity. Then we have some that believe or work with all the other spirits. They may work with the Goetia spirits, they may work with other demonic forces, but Satan is the ultimate, is the creator God. So there's all different beliefs within that theism. Then we have non-theistic. Now here we can place LaVeyan Satanism, and this is where things get a bit sticky. So we have non-theism, which is the belief or a disregard of gods and goddesses. And then we have atheism, which is a complete disregard of all supernatural or otherworldly beings, whether they are gods or goddesses, deities, messiahs, fae, everything. There's no otherworldly beings. We are it. We are physical, but we are made of energy, we are made of atoms. But there's nothing beyond that. Now, when it comes to LaVeyan Satanism, it is classified as non-theistic. However, LaVey himself was atheistic. And it's believed or said to be classified as non-theistic because in the writings, in the Satanic Bible and the Satanic rituals, there is a bit of a mishmash. And there is indication in some of the writings that the devil is an entity that you can go and pray to and speak with and interact with. So things get a bit, as I said, sticky, difficult here. And the reason for this, actually, and this is mentioned by Don Webb, is that the books by LaVey, the Satanic Bible and the Satanic Rituals, were not actually written by him. May have been one or two things here and there that he included, but large portions of the Satanic Bible were plagiarized. The large portions of it were just lifted from Ragnar Redbeard, he wrote in the early 1800s, if I remember correctly. It's suspected that Ragnar Redbeard was a pen name for Arthur Desmond, that was the name. But anyway, large portions were lifted from Ragnar Redbeard's writings and included in the Satanic Bible. And the rituals, all of the rituals were written by other people. Michael Aquino contributed a fair amount. So, this is why, LaVey was an atheist, but there is non-theistic aspects which come through in the writings, and that's because they were written by other people, and they had their own little take on things. But when it comes to LaVeyan Satanism and its beliefs, there is the belief or complete rejection of any otherworldly beings or supernatural beings. So Satan is not an entity, it is an archetype, it is an idea. It's something that Satan is just a representation of a concept. There is no belief in any other gods, goddesses, or beings, otherworldly beings of any kind. There is no belief in a body-soul dualism, so the body does not have a soul. We do not have souls or spirits. There is no belief in life and death or life after death. When we die, we simply cease to exist. So if you take these beliefs, that is atheism. It is not non-theism. A good example of non-theism would be Buddhist practices, Buddhist beliefs. The Buddhists believe that there are gods and goddesses, but they are still stuck in samsara, and therefore they are not worthy of worship. So it really is reliant on the Buddhist themselves, the Buddhist practitioner, to raise themselves out of samsara and reach enlightenment. So if we were to have a look at non-theism, non-theism is more along the lines of there is a belief in otherworldly beings, but you do not worship them, you do not work with them, they are there. Some of them may just be the forces of nature, and we need those forces of nature in order to exist, for things to continue. But we don't worship them, we don't work with them, we don't go to them, we rely purely on ourselves. So that becomes separate to atheism. which is a complete rejection of all of those entities, all of the entire idea of otherworldly beings, of spirit, soul, God, of even life after death. There is no cycle, there is no reincarnation. If you find that difficult to understand, when we die we just cease to exist, and what happens? In an atheistic concept, what you are often referring to, and it's very much based in science, the belief of scientific belief, and I think the difficulty here again comes with progression. With quantum physics and such things, there's a constant evolvement, where we are discovering new things, and those new things start to see things a little differently to just the basic concept of atoms. But the atheistic concept is basically, I'm not atheist myself, so it might be better to go and talk to somebody who is an atheistic witch or an atheistic Satanist, etc. But sorry, getting back to it, the basic concept is that our body and everything is made up of a collection of atoms. When we die, those atoms are dispersed, and there is energy atoms. This energy, which is the atoms, cannot be created and cannot be destroyed. So think of it like a bunch of atoms coming together to form a body. When that body dissolves, the atoms release, and those atoms go off and they start to form other things, different things. Doesn't mean that they all go off and start forming something different. They disperse, so that one body becomes many, many other things. Sorry, I'm starting to lose my train of thought here. So when we die, our body, the atoms of our body disperse and they go off and they make other things. That energy cannot be created or destroyed. So the atoms cannot be created or destroyed. Coming back to quantum physics, we know that atoms pop in and out all the time. But besides that, I mean, the whole idea of this dispersion of energy, of the atoms, of going off to create other things, we could relate this back to the idea of the cosmic soup. When we die, our soul goes into the cosmic soup and it gets mixed up with all the other souls, and because this belief often comes along with animism, it's not just souls of people, it's souls of animals, it's souls of rocks, it starts, souls of the stone people, of trees and plants. So all these souls get mixed up, and then eventually a lump gets taken out and made into a new person, or a new rock, or a new tree, or a new animal, etc., etc., etc. But what gets pulled out is a mixture of all of these souls. So in a way, we can view this as very similar. It's just a different way of explaining it, a different way of understanding it, a different ideology, a different worldview. But anyway, to get back to the question. So, is it easier to be a theistic or non-theistic Satanist? Again, coming back to your own belief, your own understanding of things. And what you might find is the easiest thing to do is actually pick one and just start traveling down that road. Just go along with it, learn everything you can about it, and if it doesn't feel right at some point, then skip on to the next one and try that one out, see if that fits you better. It is a bit like trying on clothes, although it's a good analogy, but I don't really like using it because it kind of gives the impression that we can just try on a coat and throw it away, and try on another coat and throw it away, and just keep going through. When you are on these magical paths, you want to actually immerse yourself in them. You want to completely understand them properly. It's not a case of just taking a path, trying it on and throwing it away because it doesn't fit. So we take something. Every time we venture down a new path, we take something from it, and it becomes who we become, or it creates who we become. So each path has its own value, has its purpose. But you might find that as you're going, you might pick non-theistic Satanism, LaVeyan Satanism, and there may be some things which you agree with, and maybe some things you disagree with that don't quite gel with you. So then once you've experienced that, once you've got the full immersion of it, then try theistic Satanism and go down that path and see what fits there and what feels right for you and what feels wrong for you. There's going to be things that feel wrong for you, but you are experiencing it, you are immersing yourself in it, you are understanding what it is. And it really is the only way to do this. Witchcraft itself is experiential. You can read as many books as you want, you can listen to as many people as you want, but until you experience it, you will not understand it. So it's all very experiential. So you need to go on the non-theistic Satanist path, experience it, understand it, know what it is, find out exactly what you like and what you don't like about it. Then go on the theistic Satanist path and do the same thing. Experience it, understand it, immerse yourself in it, and find what you do like and what you don't like about it. And it doesn't mean that you have to reject all of the things you don't like. There could be some things you don't like that you have to actually keep in order to balance your own path. But then once you've got that experience, once you've had that immersion in both, you can then decide which fits best for you. And really it will probably, and especially in this case, it will probably boil down to simply, do you believe that Satan is an entity, or do you believe that Satan is just an idea and a concept, an archetype? Do you accept the idea that there are many otherworldly beings, or do you completely reject the idea outright? Do you believe you have a soul? Do you believe you do not have a soul? Do you believe there is life after death? Do you believe there is no life after death and you cease to exist? Your atoms just disperse. So there's quite a big divide across the fence when it comes to these two concepts, and I think the best thing to start with is those questions, and through those questions you can decide where you want to start. And maybe you do start on a non-theistic path and it fits you perfectly, you don't need to try the theistic, or vice versa. But just remember that if you do go down the non-theistic path, you are most likely going to come to LaVeyan Satanism. And that LaVeyan Satanism, it's sticky, because although it is considered to be non-theistic because of the writings, it is actually atheistic. So just bear that in mind when you are exploring that path itself. And again, if you do go down the LaVeyan Satanist path, you don't have to take all of the concepts and believe them outright. This isn't Christianity. In fact, it's complete. Especially if you're going down the LaVeyan Satanist path, it's a complete rejection of Christianity. In fact, in many cases, we could say LaVeyan Satanism is anti-Christian, whereas other Satanistic paths, especially theistic, are quite often not anti-Christian. A lot of people will become anti-Christian because they came from a Christian background and they completely reject that. So the reaction to that is usually an anti-Christian basis. But theistic Satanism does not need to be anti-Christian. It can be a religious path, a religious belief, a spiritual tradition which stands on its own, which has nothing, absolutely nothing to do with Christianity. So there's many avenues to explore here, and I'm going to leave you there. Maybe more confused than you were to begin with, but it's a good place to start. Confusion's often a good thing, because at least it gets you started on something to explore. Alright, so that's it for today, and I will see you next week. Have a good one. Cheers for now. Bye bye.